thing. We've got to make sure that we organize to bring resources into the community that's going to be impacted the most. And I can tell you the Western District and the northeastern part of Birmingham are going to be two of the most highly impacted areas in the state of Alabama. And what we want to do is make sure that we organize in order to make sure that we have an equitable distribution of resources to address the needs that are in the Western community. So that's very, very important. So we need to organize as a community for the next stage and the next stage that's coming up. And so I'm going to put some pieces down and be able to share them with you all. I will do that via a website or even Facebook. Making sure that you have the information that you need. And so this topic would be organizing your community during the COVID-19 pandemic. COVID-19 pandemic. And I am multitasking here. I'm putting part of this on Mission Alabama's Facebook Live piece so that we would be able to preserve it and you would be able to go back and see it over and over again. All right, so here we go. Ready to get so we're in the response phase. So remember, we're still in the response phase right now. As long as the incident is out of control, then your first responders are in control. And the way this is different than any disaster we've seen in recent time, because FEMA is not at the head of this response. HHR, Health and Human Resources, your health department, they are the lead, and then FEMA falls in up underneath them. And so that's very, very important to know. And so, again, we're in the response phase. We're in phase one still, trying to figure out how to stop this virus from spreading. We don't know how right now. So we're practicing social distancing, which is kind of like letting a fire burn out, is the hope. And then they're going to study it, and they're going to see whether or not those flames will come back up again, because they don't understand the nature of this fire. The next phase will be relief. This is the immediate phase. So what you see now is everyone stocking up. You see the food banks, they are responding in providing relief. And so if you watch the newspaper, read a newspaper and watch the news, you're going to see more and more reports of food banks not having the resources that they need, that they are running out. And they're going to say, I think the Central Alabama Community Food Bank said that it's not a money issue. They don't have the food that they used to have. That's because a lot of your food banks that are in our communities, the larger ones, the smaller ones, they get the overflow from the imported food that comes from the docks. They don't want the food to rot on the docks as it comes into America. And so they send that out into the food bank network across America. And then the food banks, they send them out to our community-based food banks. And that's where all the free stuff comes. And then the second place, manufacturers and food brokers, they too end up with extra food that they do not want to go to waste. And so what happens is they take that food and they donate it to a nonprofit, and that nonprofit puts the food out into the community. It is a nonprofit distributor. Well, what's happening, because people are making a run on food right now and trying to stock up because of fear, then there's not an overflow of food. So that's what's happening. Think about it like this. When we hear that a tornado is coming in one night, we go and clean off the shelves of the grocery store. Well, for the last 2-3 months, there's been a tornado coming every day, or an event, something like that, that causes people to want to run to the store and stock up. That's why there's a shortage of paper and certain canned goods and meat and those kind of things. It is that fear that we practice all year long it is cleaning out the stores, and so that overflow of food is disappearing. Now what happens as the overflow of food disappears in our food deserts, let's say if you do a 5-mile radius, or let's say a 2-mile radius to our neighborhood and community, though in those 2 miles is all of the food that we have for this whole area. So you got to think about that. In this western corridor, you're talking about a couple Merino stores, you're talking about 2 Piggly Wigglies, and I'm not sure what the other ones are within a couple of miles, but those are probably the largest ones. So you're talking about those stores having to have enough food to feed the folks that are in this area in the midst of a food grab. And so that's what's causing the food shortage. And so because of that, you see people making our low, moderate income and food insecure families are making a demand on the pantries and on the food banks, right? So I want us to understand that right now, this is the relief phase right now. The relief phase is meeting in the immediate needs right now. Think about it as the MASH program that used to come on TV. A MASH unit was not to heal people, but to stabilize them during time of trauma. So everyone that's responding right now, United Way, 211, food banks, all these folks, they are all in the relief phase, and they are responding to the health crisis. Here's the part that we needed to share and understand, that this will be a 2-phase, let's say, crisis or 2-phase incident. Phase 1 is the health incident. Phase 2 will be the humanitarian incident. And so a humanitarian crisis is coming, and that is the one that government does not have the capacity to respond to. So let me say that again. Everyone's focused on the virus, and they're responding to it. But after the virus goes, and so EMA is mobilized, FEMA's mobilized, health departments are mobilized, all of them are responding to the health crisis, and then people are providing relief, and that's called VOAD, V-O-A-D, Volunteer Organizations Active in Disaster. Now, Veronica Johnson coordinates volunteer organizations active in disaster. Now, this is not all of the volunteer organizations, this is not all of the foundations and the like, but they are volunteer organizations that mobilize to provide the relief that's needed from the immediate impact of the crisis. So that's what's happening now. And so everybody's kind of running and they're scrambling, and we're doing the TV shots and we're doing the Facebook Lives and we're doing all of that stuff. And this is the relief phase right here. While everyone's responding to the earthquake, we've got to plan and organize for the tsunami that's coming. And that's what I want to talk to us about today. We got to understand that this is not it. The tsunami that's coming is going to come from the unavailability of food in our homes, of low, moderate income families in home. So about 30% of our children are food insecure before they even get to school. 25% of our families are food insecure before they even get to school. And so most of the food insecure and the most help needed are going to be our children and many of our seniors, right? So they're going to be the ones that are going to be impacted by the third phase. After they get this health thing in order, you're going to have a lot of people that are going to want to move on, but in our community, we're going to have a disproportionate number of people that are unable to move on. And so for that, they're going to need aid in recovery. All right, because response phase, that's not us for the most part. We're not in the response phase. That's the government, the police, the fire, That's the EMA, that's the county, that's the city. They all have their disaster plans, street and sanitation, critical workers. That's them. We kind of watched. And then the relief phase, what you've seen are volunteer organizations that are active in disaster. Many of them have been trained, and every time there's an event, these people come on board and they work. And they have the ability through their own networks. They raise the resources for such a time as this. This is a part of their missions. And so there's a whole group of those nonprofits. Here's where we have to organize, and that is the recovery phase. And in the recovery phase is after people are high-fiving, the pandemic is in control. We met the immediate needs during relief, the volunteer organizations active in disaster. And then in the aftermath of that is going to be the people that live in our community here in this western area and in the northeastern area of Birmingham, Alabama. It's going to be those folks whose disaster continues to go through a humanitarian crisis. And that's going to burn like a fire that if we don't have a plan to extinguish that fire will overflow onto some areas that we don't want to burn. I think that's probably the best image to get given. And so to prepare for that, we're not interrupting what the responders do. We're not interrupting what the VOAD does, the volunteer organizations that are active during the disaster. It is the recovery phase that we have to begin to look at. And we've got to figure out how we are going to respond to the human need that's there. And so one of the things that the brothers in FEMA shared with us, our team, was that you're going to have resources that are allocated for the response. And so you saw that the mayor went up and he said, we're going to put more money in for first responders and overtime and all. So money's going to be allocated for the response. And then you're going to have money that is allocated for the relief effort. Now, in the relief effort, VOAD, you got to understand that none of the people that are active in VOAD, volunteer organizations active in disasters, are receiving any federal funding or anything like that. That's not happening. You may have a local municipality that wants a certain area addressed that is in line with money that they already have. They may allocate a few dollars in that area to plug a hole. Now, so that's the phase where we are. The next phase is the recovery. So more money will come down from Washington and other places for the recovery. The way the money will come down from Washington is that it will come to our states. The states will administrate it and kind of have oversight, and then it will come down to our counties. And so let's say the money that comes down to our county, it will be split, let's say, 3 ways. Jefferson County will get the combined money for, let's say, the 31 cities and towns, and then Birmingham will get their own direct funding from some of these funds, and then Bessemer will get their own direct funding from some of these funds, right? And so the money will flow along whatever structures that are available in the community, right? Not whatever organizations that are available, but whatever structures that are available. It is like you getting in your car and saying, how do I get to Tuscaloosa? And Siri says you go this way. She's going to pull up the available roads and give you alternate patterns for how you can travel to your destination. The same thing is going to happen in the third phase that has not yet come but will come, which is the recovery effort. And the recovery effort, its goal is to help the people that have survived. To that end, it's going to be important that we have a long-term recovery, let's say a long-term recovery committee or structure. And that becomes very, very important because people are going to be affected and they're going to need help. So our unemployment, we know that our unemployment is in Canada, it's over 15% right now. The government says that ours is going to go to about 20%. You have some people that say it's going to push upwards to 30%. And don't remember, in the Great Depression, the unemployment rate was about 24%. And so for a limited period of time, we're going to have a tsunami of human needs, and we've got to organize into a long-term recovery committee to be able to respond to those needs. Because they're not there, and let me say this: government is not going to respond to 99 organizations. They're not going to respond to 23 communities. They're not going to respond to 1,200 churches. They're not going to respond to 12,000 businesses. They're going to respond to a collective unit that is made up of your churches, your neighborhoods, associations, folks in your school, your businesses, your nonprofits, which they call NGOs, non-governmental organizations. And then we are going to have to recruit the talented within our community and the connected in our community to make sure that we are organized to receive resources and then to make requests of the governor, to make requests of the county, to make requests of Birmingham to put resources into the most help needed area. And this is going to become so important. And so we have got to organize for the recovery. We're not there yet, but it's coming. We have to plan now for what's coming. One of my mentors said to me that the word preparation means prepared at an earlier time for future use. If we are going to have preparation as a community, we're going to have to prepare at an earlier time for a future use. And so if you are making notes, the thought is that we are going to need as an area a long-term recovery committee. Now, every small town and city should have this. United Way won't have the capacity to respond in times past to all 33 cities and every neighborhood or district within those cities. So they're going to be in a coordinating role, and they are an amazing organization that will help with resource raising and the like. I'm not downplaying them. I'm simply saying that this is bigger than them. 211 will be overwhelmed easily if that need comes in from 33 cities in all of the neighborhoods, districts, communities within those cities. So we have to organize. And the main purpose of our organization is that we want to help with the unmet need within our community. And so, does that make sense? And so, assistance may come from churches and nonprofit agencies and state and local agencies, from problems to food, to getting help filling out paperwork for unemployment, to counseling. So the long-term recovery committee will have to have the capacity to respond in a collective way. This is where you come in. This is where the churches come in. Our neighborhoods and communities come in. Our businesses come in. Our nonprofits come in. We're going to need all hands on deck. And so the purpose of the long-term recovery committee, one, organize. One of the things that the brothers at FEMA said this to me at all, he said, look, right now, the name of the game is to get as much resources into the community where there's the greatest amount of need. So the first thing we've got to do with our politicians, with our representatives, with our council people, our mayor, our commissioners, our state people, is we have to say to them, we need an equitable response in this recovery. We need an equitable response in this recovery. You all, this is so important. This was one of the first things that they told me. They said, look, some folks are going to want to take resources and make other places the epicenter of this disaster. And this was in 2011. And sure enough, they wanted Tuscaloosa to be the epicenter, even though Birmingham had this amazing amount of damage. And he said, so for that reason, we're going to have to be organized, because Tuscaloosa is getting organized right now. And so, and whoever is the most organized, they said, are going to get the resources. So we've got to organize, and we've got to get the right policy, which is an equitable distribution of resources. Not to black people, not to white people, not to red or yellow or brown people, but we want to be data driven. And if 60% of the people that need help live in Mountain Brook, then 60% of the resources need to go to Mountain Brook. If 60% of the people that need help live in Hayden, Alabama, then 60% of the resources that come into the county need to go there. But if 60% of the people in the county that need help live in the Western District of Birmingham or the Northeastern District of Birmingham, then we want 60% of the resources going there. This is the greatest thing that you can do right now. Have these conversations. We want an equitable response. Not a black response, not a white response, but follow the data. Where are the most help needed? And when you follow the data, it's going to be along the 2059 corridor, because Birmingham truly runs from west to east, east to west. And the 2059 corridor runs from west to east with a little northern in it. And what you're going to find, that's where the historical poverty is. That's where the greatest need is. That's where the greatest health disparities are. And we need an equitable response. So when people say we're going to do testing, then we're going to say, let's do it by data. If they say we're going to do food distribution, we're going to say, let's do it by data. If they say we're gonna help put in more money to help businesses recover, let's do it by data. You all, this is so important, because this is the policy that you have to set at the beginning. And the policy dictates how resources flow. We will be unsuccessful if every single one of our representatives, every single one of our not only representative, our executive folks, the mayor, the council, the commissioners, we would do a disservice if all of them are not singing off of the same page. We need to follow the data. It reminds me of Aldrich Gunn. You got to count to 5. He knew that. We've got to follow the data. So here's where we are. Right now, plans are being made, let's say, with FEMA, let's say at a larger level, is how do we feed our people? And so President Trump is not just saying let's reopen the country. He's looking at this tsunami that's coming. And this tsunami of which is a humanitarian issue, he is super concerned about that. And his response is, we got to get started, because if we don't, then this thing is going to get worse. And I get what he's saying. He's right in that sense, that it is going to get worse and worse. But what I want to say to us is that we are going to be the ones that are disproportionately affected in the Western District of Birmingham and in the Northeastern District of Birmingham. We're going to be the ones most affected. So we're going to have to organize. So what's happening now, this same conversation is being had with churches. This same conversation is being had with nonprofits. And then the same thing with the businesses. Our businesses in the Western District area are predominantly small business. They will not make it back unless we organize. whatever beef we may have with a grocer, Piggly Wiggly or Merino, or the two major that are in our area, they are all we have right now. They are here. So we're going to begin to think about stabilizing those main pieces that we have in our community, which means we're going to have to shop home. We're going to have to shop local. We're going to have to help these small businesses get back up so that they can employ these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 folks that the banks will not employ because of their past history. We're going to have a strategy. So what's going to happen is here's what are we going to need our communities to do? Resources are going to flow down roads that have been paved and established. That means to say that goes to say that we're going to have to identify the people, the most help needed people in our areas. We're going to make sure that our seniors are taken care of, which means that we have to begin to compile a list of the most vulnerable. I want you to think about this, the list of the most vulnerable. There are seniors that are living alone, seniors that may have adult children with them, and now they are not working, those adult children. Right now, they may not need the help, but what's going to happen because of mobility and that kind of deal, as far as being able to travel, they're going to need the help. And if they're going to take in, I know my grandmom, she's going to take in 2 of my cousins that are struggling, and she's going to share the last of what she has. We're going to have to identify these folks and begin to make a list. And it's going to take integrity, because we don't need to give food to people that don't need food. And so in this big rush of relief, people are getting food that really don't need it. They're simply stocking their pantries, but they have the transportation and the ability to buy. You all are going to have to help make sure that we identify the people when we get into that recovery phase that really need the resources. Part of our job, my job as a nonprofit, is to make sure that there is a network of organizations to where the food can come down, let's say, into the western area, so that we have a place that has refrigeration, we have a place that can receive, that has a tow motor, we have a place that can receive items, goods big enough to box, and these are all donated goods that will be coming down through the federal government, be it FEMA or the USDA. They will come down. And then we've got to have these buildings that are in our community, and most of them are churches. We've got to have these churches that have the capacity actually become centers to be able to serve the different parts of our communities in this western district. And then we got to do the same thing in the northeastern district for sure. But what we want is for resources to be staged in the western area, because that's going to be the greatest area of need. And we want resources staged in the northeastern area of the city. That's going to be the greatest area of need. And then what we can have, the existing food banks that are in the community can serve the southern and central, that kind of deal, and the other areas where the need's not as great. And so we are organizing now with a hub and feeder kind of structure, that we'll have a hub where food comes in, and then we'll distribute out through that hub to 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 centers. And the ultimate plan is that we would wind up initially with a hub in the west and a hub in the east. And then there would be, looking at the density population, there would be a center within each of those community areas. Every community won't have a hub or even a center. You'll draw a line, let's say a 2-mile radius or a mile radius around that center, or 2-mile radius or 5-mile radius, whatever it is. And that's how you will serve those areas. Why is this important? Because when it comes down to distribution of resources and requesting resources, one of the things that they always say to organizations in our community is that you don't have the capacity. you don't have the capacity, so we don't get the resources. So organizations outside of our community, they wind up getting the resources and then giving some to us because we don't have the capacity to manage and distribute. That's what we're building right now. So while at Mission, Alabama, while you are organizing your neighborhoods to reach out to the most help needed, to identify them, while you are identifying them, we're building capacity. We're helping to get people to come in and work with. In fact, for the last 6 months to a year, the University of Alabama has been working with nonprofits in this Western business district. The School of Business, their Culver House School of Business, have been working with nonprofits in Pratt City, in 5 Points West, in the Titusville area, across this whole area. It's as if God knew that this was coming, and so it's been building capacity. And then they've also partnered with us in the business district in the western area to help our businesses. And this is the Culver House School of Business. So they have committed to being part of a business incubator, which is going to be necessary for the recovery of our businesses and the local jobs in our community. So all of that is going on. Organizing is going on all around you. The churches are organizing with distribution. The nonprofits are organizing by building capacity to be able to directly receive resources. And then our neighborhoods and communities have to expand our organizations almost back to the day of when we had block captains. And I know you all did it once before, but the more we are able to organize and say that we have a strategy for distribution, then we can go to the governor and say we need resources. We can go to the county commission and say, here is the unmet need in our area. We can go to the city of Birmingham. Here is the unmet need in our area. I can tell you that VOAD has been asking the governor for additional resources. And one of the things that happens is that while she's asking for the additional food resources, Sister Johnson, to be able to distribute out into our communities, when you have organizations that are going for the photo ops, doing the pictures of giving out food and saying, oh, we've got more than enough and we've got all this food in boxes, then when the governor looks at that, what she says is they don't need food in the western area. Well, we know that's not true. And so what we want to do is have the long-term recovery committee. And you all play an important role, and I'll begin to land the plane now. And I just wanted to give you a broad picture. The role that you play is helping with the saturation strategy, identifying who are the folks that need the resources and the food. Part of our job and what we're doing at Mission, Alabama is mapping out distribution. And that's because that's the background of our team. We work with UPS and other logistics organizations, and so we know distribution. Our job is, if you can identify the areas of need, so let's say in a simple way, these are the addresses that need to have a package delivered, then what we will do will be to continue to mobilize volunteers and other organizations to help with the distribution of those resources and food into our community. And I want you to think about this. This will be a growing need for the next 4, perhaps 6 months. Remember, if we get the health thing under control in 4 months, that takes us to August. Once our economy starts back up, the big businesses will start, but the unemployment will stay high in our community. Then, within the next 6 months, then our folks are still going to be struggling in getting back to work. So that live in our community. So those folks that live in our community are still going to be struggling. So what we've got to do is we've got to be prepared to respond to the human need. And so those are the specific ways that you can help. we need to organize from the community level to the neighborhood level again, and have that network of communication like you once had before with our block captains and the like. Whether it's that extensive or not, I don't know, but that's what's coming. Resources will be coming to aid in the recovery, and they will go to the people that are most organized. Our citizens, our neighbors will not be okay without you organizing. This is going to be bigger than any one personality. There will be no pastor in the forefront. There will be no business in the forefront. There will be no nonprofit in the forefront, because this is so broad. What you all felt, Sister Ellen and Pratt, in that time, the need to respond is going to be across this whole Western District and across the Northeastern District in Birmingham. And it was huge then. This is going to be overwhelming if we are not organized. So that's where we are. Think of us as operating under a Joseph anointing, that we are preparing now, prepared at an earlier time for future use, for a famine that is coming. The famine will come. It will come. This thing is going to linger on, and while everybody's on the sugar high, they're not going to tell you that even though the death rate is dropping, the death rate and the infection rate is dropping, and people are excited that right now in America we still have 527,000 active cases. 527,000 active cases, and we're going to be putting 20 to 25,000 more people every day on top of that over the next few weeks. And so that's important for us to know, because that's the reality of where we are. And so again, when it comes to the closed cases, a closed case, our cases are closed by two ways right now. One is by death, and the other one is by recovery. Right now, 60% of our people that have been diagnosed have recovered on the closed cases. So a closed case, 60% of the closed cases recovered. 40% of the closed cases is ending in death right now, and that's in the United States. So I'm telling you this not to panic or not to say, but to understand that there's a lot more trauma coming to our communities. So I'll take some questions at this time. I hope that gives you a snapshot of where we're going. I wanted to draw the picture that what we are fighting for is not the response. That's government. We're not fighting for the relief effort that's going on. That's the VOAD, Volunteer Organizations Active in Disasters. We are organizing for the recovery, a long-term recovery strategy to where we help those families. The mission is to strengthen the area-wide coordination by sharing information, simplifying our neighbors' access to resources, and resolving the cases of unmet needs together. And our goal is to help families to develop a plan to receive adequate assistance when they need it. And this recovery will be composed of representatives from the VOAD folks, disaster response, but also existing community organizations. So our neighborhood associations, our churches, our businesses, our nonprofits. That's who is going to make up this long-term recovery committee. And your role, I can't overstate it. Your role will literally determine, I believe, in many cases, who will eat and who will not eat. Because those that have the capacity to drive, those that have the capacity to go get it, it's like the book bag giveaway. They make their rounds, but the people that need it the most will not have the capacity to make that rounds. and it will be your job to help identify them. It will be my job as a nonprofit to map out a way to get the resources to them on a consistent basis. So I hope that helped. I'll take any questions that you might have that maybe I can help with and answer. So if you have a question, just say who you are and you can ask that question. Well, neat deal. Any way that I can help you all provide resource, if you would ask, I'll be happy to gather that information and the like. If you have question about what's going on, preparations are being made now for how to respond to the homeless, which is a big deal because our homeless population is larger than what we think it is. We look at homeless as the ones that are on the streets, but you have some other folks that are homeless that are sleeping on floors. You have others that move in and out of homelessness. They're okay for a few weeks and then they're back out again. And so preparations are being made on how to respond to them because they have to be stabilized as a community as well so that we can get the spread under arrest. And so that's what's going on. Jefferson County has organized under a unified command structure. A unified command structure. That means that the 33 cities have said that we're going to go under a unified command structure with the county EMA and the county health department. What we need from our representatives, the one of 33 mayors, the one council of 33 city councils, we need to make sure that everything even with the unified command, is data driven. Where do we put the testing sites? Follow the data. Where do we distribute food? Follow the data. We need to make sure that it's an equitable distribution of resources. So I know I keep saying that, but it's so important. So I hope that helps. Go ahead, sis.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I've listened to you explain everything, and I know I've shared with you how we as the communities are set up under which we call the CAB plan. So what I'm asking you is, you have all of this information, everything. Do you have anything in black and white that you can share with, like say, Jimmy is our CAB president. So then, Jimmy and those officers, and then you got the community officers, that we will have something to serve as a guide in terms of what you're asking these neighborhoods to do.
Yeah.
I think that to me would be a critical part. People sort of need to have something in black and white, in terms of this is what's happening, this is where we need your help. So therefore, then the organization that drives us can then channel that information out.
Yes, so that's really good. So there's a lot of information that's available on long-term recovery committees. And so if you put in FEMA long-term recovery committees, it will tell you the role of the committees, what they do, and what the needs are that you can anticipate. And so each area is going to respond to their needs, differently. And so, my recommendation, because I live in the West, is that we have a Western area long-term recovery committee, because I think that we're going to have to share our strength. A Southside community may not have the same needs that we have. And so this long-term recovery committee, it may not affect every neighborhood and every community. And so for those communities that are going to have high unemployment, those communities that have a disproportionate amount of poverty, those communities to where they're going to have hunger, those are going to be the ones that are going to need to organize and get help. And so the communities will have to say, yes, this is us, or no, it's not. But I can tell you, in Mountain Brook, they're probably not having this conversation. But all of the information and data for Long-Term Recovery Committee is online. You can look at what FEMA has put out about it, and you can look at what other communities have done, and then you can see how the long-term recovery communities are organized with a team of leaders. As far as the neighborhoods and communities, it will be different for each neighborhood and each community. And so, those communities will get together and say, yes, we're going to need help, or, and we need to bank our buying power. We need to put our buying power together. Other communities will say, hey, we're good. We'll use our next door and we will meet the need. And Miss So-and-so may just need food delivered. And so that's where you began, how you as a neighborhood or you as a community have to decide on how you want to meet or how you would like to see the needs met for your most vulnerable, for your unemployed, and the like. What we will do is we will gather that information and we will make it available to whoever wants it. Here is some of the best practices. The churches that we are working with, they're putting together these care teams. These care teams will help people that are connected to them and around them with unemployment, filling that out. They'll help them with filing for deferments or deferrals for utilities. They'll help them identify different places where resources are coming down. Like Jefferson County is about to get an allocation, I believe, at some point it'll be announced to help people with utility bills. Those organizations are going to be doing that. That's what they are doing. But the vast majority of the people in our city, in our area, are not connected to a church. We might have about 35 to 40% of people connected to a church. That leaves another 60%. So what I will do, I can share with you what the churches are doing, and then you as a community and neighborhoods can decide whether or not the best way you can organize to do some of the same things, or if you say we don't have that capacity, let's connect to some of these churches. Then if you need help with that, we can help with that. Or you can look at the churches that are in your neighborhood and community and say, look, it will help if you will organize so that as we identify the people that have need, we know where they can receive help and assistance. Does that help answer your question?
Well, yeah, that gives a little guide in terms of what we need to do. Because, like you say, when you want to organize, you got to have a guide, something telling you that this is what needs to be done and how it needs to be done before you can start put something on ground.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I was asking you, since you've already sort of ahead on this, are you prepared to send us this guide, what you say there? The churches are doing a certain thing as a format.
Mm-hmm.
You have a format with all of this data so that we can look at that and then see what they need up there with a plan to tackle.
Yeah. So
does that make sense?
Yeah. So here's what I will do. One, again, use the plethora of information that is available online through FEMA long-term recovery committees. Long-term recovery committees. There's a plethora of information with that. The churches, because many of them have staff and the like, we prepared some guidance for them to say, here's how your church can help. And And so what we've done is we've given them a guide. And so what I will do is I will share that guide with you all, that you can look at it and use it as you see fit. But in that guide, it's going to tell you what the needs are. It's going to tell you it's going to tell you the phases of the disaster, what's going on. It's going to tell you some suggestions on how you can organize to meet that need. Your role in that will be determined by your capacity. And so if you think about it like this, if we can have the churches to play a role, then it might be that your goal might be, how do we connect with these centers or the churches that are in our community that have this capacity. And so I will send that to you right now. I'll send you 2 things. I will send you the guide to date that we've given to the churches and households of faith. And then I will also give you kind of a needs assessment form for those folks that have need. And so I think you all will have to come up with a strategy for how you use it. But I will say this, the more organized we are, the more effective we will be. And so, Sister Sims, I'll start there, right? And then if you need more help or guidance than what the websites give and what I send you, then let me know.
Okay, let me ask this. Okay, as far as our mayor and the council, those who weigh out city structure setup, have you shared any of this information with them so that as even the mayor calls us and informs leaders of these different things, where are they on this in terms, because they know that this is going to be happening. They're our front line, so since they know all these things should be happening, have they been informed to be on board with all of this and also share with us these things to encourage leaders to try to get organized in this fashion? Have you worked with them or shared any of this with them? And just ask this question.
Yeah, no, it's fine. So, in the way disasters work, in the way that government works, in a disaster, government owns the response, right? In other words, they are the first responders that come in and stabilize the community. And then government, and so they respond to the criminal need, the health need, all of that stuff. And then in the second phase, so that's government's role. That's their role. And then in the second phase, for relief efforts, it's Volunteers Active in Disaster, the VOAD. The VOAD responds to the immediate needs from relief. That's not a government function, right? Because government doesn't respond directly to the felt needs. That's not their role. You might have some cities that may do that for a period of time, some aspect of it, but you won't see cities doing case management and stuff like that. That's not government's role. And then for the long-term recovery, government usually doesn't get involved in that. Usually that is so when you look at the long-term recovery committee, you see on there, you don't see government giving services and stuff like that. You see the households of faith, you see the non-governmental organizations and the like. And so government has their hands full with the response. But there are some things as a community that we have to do for ourselves. And so the recovery of our neighbors is one of those things. And so when we go back to government, then we can say as a community, this is what we need. But you don't look for the government to lead the community, if that makes sense to you. Yeah, it's the community builds communities build neighborhoods, and communities and business people, individuals build businesses and business districts. The government provides the infrastructure help and assistance that's needed. So the government's role in our community is to bring about stabilization through infrastructure need. And so that's why you see them working on healthcare. That's why you see them putting money towards helping first responders and, all of that stuff. They're not going to the government is not going to allocate, for the most part, dollars out of their budget to feed families. Because they don't have the money, most governments. They're strapped. So it's not really their... So on this side of it, on the relief side, it's not a political solution. It's a community-wide solution. And for that reason, the thing that will govern that will be the long-term recovery committee. And so if you go upstream and try to get government to organize how the neighborhoods, how the nonprofits, how the churches, how the volunteer organizations operate, that's just not their role, nor do they have the capacity to do it. FEMA recognized that, and for that reason, that's why you will find a whole lot of stuff on the web about long-term recovery committees. And if you read that, you'll get an understanding of how that's supposed to operate, and then also how the neighborhood association can operate. Whether or not you're going to organize with a political structure to get things done through government, or a humanitarian structure to provide relief for your people. So think about your neighborhoods, communities as being an intercessor. You can go to the community on behalf of government, but you can also go to government on behalf of the community. But on top of that, being an intercessor, you also have a role as a neighbor. And as a neighbor, that's not a political piece. Because you are structured, you will be able to provide human relief to your neighbors. So anyway, all that's on the website, so that you can kind of fill in with what I'm talking about. And when you Google FEMA long-term recovery or long-term recovery committee and what should be happening during that phase, then it's important that you know that. So that is FEMA. FEMA will be the one that provides resources directly to the community. And so our city, county, and state government can only give out resources according to the guidelines that FEMA sets. What do we have to do? We have to organize according to the guidelines that FEMA sets for distribution of resources. That won't be a Birmingham, that won't be a county, it won't be a state issue. That's FEMA.
All right. So what you have a website set up that accesses all of this? Is that
No, ma'am. You'll have to use Google. You'll have to Google it.
Well, I thought you were setting up some kind of website saying I Care Alabama, and then you were going to have these links on it.
Yeah, so
that happening, or
so it will happen, and what we'll do is once we'll make that as a part of the long-term recovery committee, and once we have an idea where the distribution hubs will be. And then what's being done now are the centers where food will be distributed, or will at least will go through. All of that is being decided now. So at this time right now, that website, I Care Alabama, is not available. But what is available is to be able to Google long-term recovery committees, and you might have to put a FEMA in front of it, and to see how they are organized, how they're structured, and what they can do. And then think about, with the way that policy is, think about how you can help as a neighborhood and as a community.
one question
yes, ma'am.
that I have for you is, and you said the website is going to be iStructure Alabama.
I Care Alabama.
I Care.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. When it gets up, yes.
I Care Alabama.
Right.
Another question that I have, and I guess this one is directed to Dora. Dora, if this is something that we are going to take on, are we doing it by individual neighborhoods? Are we doing it by communities? How are we going to do this if we do it?
I would say by community, to me, would be a better way. I think Mr. Woodson said something about we will organize what's called the Western District, and so doing the Western District incorporates all of the 9 communities in the Western area. So I'm thinking that we ought to do it by community in that sense, because everybody recognizes their communities from which they're in. So we do it that way, and we sort of work together to make sure that each of us have the same thing going. So I think that would be the best way to do it by community, and that way all neighborhoods under those communities can sort of chime in. What you think? After what you say, that would be the wise thing to do it by community.
I think so. I think we as community leaders would need to possibly have a conference call ourselves to hash out some of the things that are going on in our minds, or even, excuse me, if there are neighborhood leaders on the line that may have questions that we may not have thought of, that, you know, they may feel more comfortable in just sharing those, and then maybe we can get back with Mr. Woodson and share their concerns if they have any. Yeah, I agree.
I think that's really, really wise. Yeah, because you all will make sure, you all will know where the resources are. You can combine, you can bring that combined list in from each of those communities. These are our vulnerable, our most help needed as of right now. These are our families that we've identified that need help. We'll take that and put that into the database that the other organizations bring. I think that's just wise, and that way we don't miss anyone.
Okay. All right, so Evan, we'll start to get together and talk, and there are other leaders on the line, neighborhood leaders. We're going to need you all to give us any feedback, things you may be thinking of that we might not have thought about, so we can start looking at how to set up some kind of a plan for our community to address this. So I guess the sooner we sort of try to get together and talk, and we can do that on, we got a conference call. We can do that on another conference call. Let's just sort of hatch out some things. But in the meantime, we go on this website and look and see what it's saying. And then, listen, can you go ahead and send us what you have? You said there's a structure that what the churches are doing. If you can send that to us, you should have Ellen's email and mine, and just those that email Van, because the Van has been sort of with George McCall, sent to those community presidents.
Okay.
First.
Van, myself.
Okay. At least those, I think those right now for now, and then we can reach out to the others. But let's just do that, and then we can sort of get together and hatch out some things. Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great. If you would, what I'll do, let's see. What I'll do is, because there are I'm not going to do a reply all to the email you sent. Let me just send it to you, and I think I've got you and Ellen's number here, and you and Yvette. I'll send it to you. If you will make sure it gets out to them, that would be great. And then that way it doesn't, you know what I mean? It doesn't flow other.
We don't want to send it to everybody.
Right.
Yeah, we just want the community president. So if you send it to me and Ellen, just send it to me and Ellen first.
Okay, I'll do that. All right, and then and we'll go from there. and then if you all would, you're free to share that, so that's fine, and that'd be a great place to start. All right.
Okay. Anybody else got any questions on the line? Okay. If not, we'll look to see here from that email from you, Mr. Woodson, as soon as possible. Okay, to me and Ellen.
You'll have it within 5 minutes.
Okay. All right. So that's it.
All righty.
Thank you again.
All right. You're welcome. Have a great day.